Yeah, I ain't no suit-wearing businessman like you. You know, I'm just a gangster, I suppose, and I want my corners.
Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Five Corners Podcast. I am Jet Bonifay, and on the other line, ever since last week, he's been washing his hands before he digs into his drive-through fries. It's Ace Merluza.
Yes, sir. I'm ready to risk it all, baby. I'm here for it. No one's going to stop me from reaching over to grab a handful of fries.
Rona be damned.
Rona be damned.
Rona be damned. Tonight we have Mariscon as well. What's going on, brother?
Hello, hello, hello.
All right. So, we were just having that conversation about having a good baseline of shows right before this one, but I think this is going to be the format moving forward. We're going to call this our very first Around the Corners podcast, where we touch on topics from one, some, or all of our proverbial corners, whether it be culture, sports, entertainment, fitness, and parenting. Tonight, unfortunately, we have to start with some extremely racially charged events caught on video over the Memorial Day weekend. And although each incident had a diametrically opposed outcome, it highlights where our nation is today regarding race relations. So the first incident was in Minneapolis, where George Floyd, being detained by Minneapolis police, had a police officer subdue him by pressing down on his neck with the officer's knee on his neck for approximately 9 minutes. While Mr. Floyd pleaded with police officers saying he couldn't breathe, he became unresponsive after those initial 9 minutes and ultimately died after he was taken to the hospital. The police report varied wildly, and when I say wildly, it was completely inaccurate from what was actually caught on videotape. It indicated on the police report that Mr. Floyd was resisting arrest, which he wasn't, and that he had suffered medical distress before the police officers got on scene, which was obviously a lie, as he was perfectly fine up until the point where he was subdued and on the ground. The second incident was right here in our backyard in Central Park, where Chris Cooper, an avid bird watcher, asked a white female named Amy Cooper, not related, who was walking her dog, to leash her pet per the rules of this particular part of Central Park, where a lot of the bird watchers go. And obviously, as dogs roam around without leashes, it causes issues with the environment and it chases birds away, which again, if you're an avid bird watcher, you don't want to have. So again, he had asked her to put the leash on the dog, which is posted everywhere in this particular area of Central Park called the Ramble. When she refused, this is when Chris Cooper turned on his cell phone to begin filming. And she insisted that he turn off the camera, otherwise she would call the police. Chris Cooper did not, and Miss Cooper dialed 911 and began telling the 911 dispatcher that there was an African-American man threatening her and her dog, and began what I would call her, I don't want to call it Oscar-worthy, maybe Golden Globe-worthy performance in histrionics, and basically started telling the dispatcher that she was going to be accosted by this African-American man. She invoked African-American a few times on the call. After the video went viral online, she has been since fired by her company, Franklin Templeton, and she had to relinquish her dog in the process. So, two very different, but I think very similar racially charged events. What do you guys think?
Well, this has been going on for quite some time, right? From Eric Garner. If you want to take it all the way back to the 90s, the sodomization of Abner Louima, obviously, which created a great stir. Of course, he made out rich, but at what cost, right? A lot of controversy. I know a lot of people have brought up Colin Kaepernick and the question of what was he truly kneeling for, and there was a gray area there, right? No one really understood why, and everyone kind of took it as him disrespecting the flag, when in actuality, it was just him kneeling for the injustice of, African Americans being targeted. One thing I want to take away from this whole George Floyd thing, and I was watching and kind of scrolling through Stephen Jackson's Instagram, I was surprised to learn about
their friends.
His relationship with George, whom he affectionately called Twin. Stack supported him, sent them suits for interviews, mentored him. He spoke fondly about how he chose to move away from H-Town. They're both from Texas. Shout out. to make a better life for himself as a truck driver. He went to truck driving school in Minneapolis, and it's unfortunate and really sad and tragic that this had to happen to him when he tried to, where he was in the process of turning around his life. And yes, they do look alike. If you follow Stack on Instagram, he's been pretty active in making sure George's memory is honored, and he's like 100% focused on making sure that they get justice for George.
Social media has been flooded with that image of the cop kneeling on his neck, which in and of itself is totally brutal. I mean, I've seen you've seen that being the I guess protocol for subduing a criminal, which if that were the case, it might have been justified. But after watching the video, and I actually caught earlier today footage of what was happening before the actual incident was going on, and I think it was posted with the thought that there would be a justification of the way the cops acted, which is it served as totally the opposite of what I think it was intended for. Because in that footage, also George Floyd isn't doing anything to mitigate the what was done to him. I mean, it's appalling to think that now in 2020 that this is still going on, and then on the heels of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. I think hopefully it's just a big wake up call to everyone. And on the flip side of that, I think I caught both stories in reverse. I'm not sure what happened first. Was the Amy Cooper incident or the George Floyd incident?
I think the Amy Cooper one occurred prior to the George Floyd incident.
Yeah, and well, if that's the case, then it wasn't reversed. But at the same time, when you see Amy Cooper and what happened with Amy Cooper and Chris Cooper, you finally think, you got to win, because she got what she deserved. And then you see this, and it's just like another, it's one step forward and like 10 steps back. Because I have a lot of cop friends, and I think we all have a lot of cop friends, and you ultimately, all the cop friends I know are quote unquote good at their job, and they do the right things. And then it's not the entire police force, which unfortunately I think the African American community now is so outraged that a lot of them are only like they're lumping everybody together. And there's good cops out there, and unfortunately the bad ones are the ones that are getting the press,
right?
And rightfully so, because if they need to be exposed to prevent this from happening again, then I'm all for that. But unfortunately, from some police officers that I've spoken to, the good ones are now going to get lumped into that. And I really hope that nothing escalates further to where we're going to be back in the 60s.
For me, the sad part about it is, like you said, Maris, there's always, and I hate to call them rogue cops, right? This, unfortunately, is probably a case of that. The part that worries me the most was there were other police officers there, mm-hmm. and they decided to do nothing. And I think that's the part that makes me the saddest, because you're right. In many cases, many of the police officers that we know that exist in the world are generally going to do the right thing. The problem is when one of them steps out of line, is the accountability going to be there from other police officers to say, hey man, you're going too far? And this was an example of one person may have been the one that went rogue, but nobody held them accountable to your point about, hey man, we're going way beyond protocol here. Because like you said, there was nothing in that video that warranted him deserving that type of treatment. The other part about it too is, what would we be doing now if there was no cell phone video, right? So let's say the Chris Cooper scenario, right? No video. Let's pose a hypothetical thought experiment here. No video existed. Cops were, and again, Chris Cooper, Harvard educated, not that that has anything to do with anything, but black man in Central Park, right? White woman in full histrionics on the phone to a 911 dispatcher. The cops roll up. What are the chances that they're going to believe the white woman over the black man, right? Without a video. Those are the things that worry me. And I'll tell you why. It's happened to me. Not necessarily this. I live in a neighborhood, relatively affluent. I come from Jersey City. This, what I'm wearing, is my casual wear. I wear hoodies. I wear hats. My car is tinted. It's a black SUV. I can't tell you guys how many times I've driven into my little area and cops followed me. Because we're near Newark. We're near East Orange. And a lot of the burglaries, all the crime that occurs generally is imported into the neighborhood. And like I said, I can count at least a dozen times when I'm making a right and there's no reason for the cop to make a right behind me. And he does. And he follows me. So again, I think there's a certain stereotype. Obviously, there's racial profiling. I think I'm not naive enough to believe that doesn't exist in this world. But like I said, without the benefits of cell phone video technology, where would these people be? You mentioned the Ahmaud Arbery case. That was months. If the video did not surface, right, these guys would still be free. The only reason they're in jail right now is because that video surfaced.
It's absolutely right. I mean, I think there was a quote I saw thrown out there about racism not just being exposed. I mean, police racism. It's being videoed. It's being filmed. These videos are policing the police. And what concerns me most is people of privilege. I'm not going to throw out a color. They're racializing police authority. And in the case of Amy Cooper, she hits these tropes about privileged folk.
Absolutely. Okay? She's Karen.
Everyone. Right. Every single trope.
Central Park Karen. A, breaks rules she deems minor.
Mm-hmm.
B, won't take and deflects responsibility. C, getting called out triggers aggression.
Right.
Like, oh, you're going to tell me to
right. How dare you?
Leash my dog?
Right. How dare you?
How dare you?
Right.
And D, relies on being backed by authority.
Right.
In this case, police authority. And she tried to take advantage of it because she saw a black man in front of her. It was like, oh, well, it's me against him. Who are the police going to side with? Right.
And like you said, Ace, she, and this is the insidious part about this level of racism, right?
Mm-hmm.
She knew exactly how many times to say African-American in that phone call, how to incite the right type of behavior from the dispatcher by changing the tone of her voice. If you noticed in the video, she was talking perfectly normal. I mean, she was arguing, right? She was in an argumentative tone. But after she got on the phone, it turned into, like I said, full-blown histrionics.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounded like she was getting accosted.
It makes me angry because it's just, I think we've all, being from Jersey City, either have experienced some form of racism or whatever. I've heard the term reverse racism. It makes me mad, man, because like it's blatantly out there. And you see that kind of stuff in like movies. Like you saw it, I think, recently in Get Out, there's a scene like that. Actually, there's exactly a scene like that in Get Out where she's trying to play that, the victim over the phone. And then you feel like, as the audience, you're like, you son of a, and then while you're watching the video with Amy Cooper, it's the exact same thing. But luckily, Chris Cooper was brave enough to just keep filming and stay calm. That's the one thing some of us are missing here, is that he was educated enough to stay calm, to not escalate the situation and keep filming. And that's, I think, ultimately what would have saved his life, because I think if he hadn't done that, and he would have been another person that we would have been hashtagging right now.
Absolutely.
Unfortunate. And then to top it off, I think, she got so occupied with dealing with him that she didn't realize she was choking her dog. She was about to kill her dog. Like, are you kidding? Like,
that was the worst part. One of the worst parts.
She, like, tenfold risked her entire career.
Well, she lost at this point.
Well, yeah, she lost her entire career just to get Chris Cooper in trouble. Like, that's how evil do you have to be to do that, man?
Well, here's a level of arrogance, and you guys can tell me this, right? She knew she was being filmed.
Yeah.
She knew she was being filmed. She knew what the ramifications of Chris Cooper pulling out the phone. I mean, everybody has a phone that has video capabilities at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he told her, I'm filming this. She had the gall to continue with that phone call instead of dealing with the situation. Right. That to me, like I said, like Ace perfectly mentioned, is that level of privilege that you just see from people that are in these positions, right? We would never, the collective we, you, me, Maersk, would never try anything like this, right? Because we know if there's a sign that says put a leash on your dog and we didn't realize it and we're like, oh shit, I got to put a leash on my dog, there would have been no argument.
And we would have said, thank you.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. My bad. I didn't know this was a bird sanctuary or whatever the case may be. To Ace's point, she was indignant on top of that. She was already in the wrong to begin with. Then she was indignant. And then when he broke out the cell phone and said, listen, I'm going to videotape your ass. It doesn't matter. I'm still going to make the phone call. What did she expect to happen there? She expected the wheels of justice to turn into her favor because she lives in that life of privilege. And without that cell phone footage, it probably would have turned her direction, right? The cops would have shown up, to Maersk's point, and she would have been like, yeah, he was coming near me. And the cops would have had to have been like, they would have had to made a decision, right? And more often than not, unfortunately, in these racially charged times, that doesn't go against the people. That goes well against the people of color, right?
Right. And you kind of saw that manipulative emotion bubbling to the surface as that confrontation wore on, and that's another thing. She senses the confrontation, and immediately she equates it with, oh, black man, so it's a threat too. So
right.
Let me get on the horn.
Yeah. And those to me are the subtle bits of racism, the minor schisms that you and me, Ace, talk about all the time. I told you, I've been accosted in my front lawn asking me how much my lawn care services were worth. You know, I've been shoveling snow in my front driveway, and I've had people walk by me and go, hey, who's your boss? I'd like to hire you to shovel the snow in my front yard.
Jesus Christ.
Right? So to many people, again, who live lives of privilege, that doesn't seem like racism to them. But to us, it's like, oh, it's because I'm wearing a certain type of clothes and I look a certain way. Therefore, I can't possibly be the owner of this home. I have to be a manual laborer that's working for this man or whomever owns this house. That's the tough part for me to swallow, because it starts out that way and it ends up in George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, right?
Right. Yeah, and to your point about the dress code, how you dress, I mean, I've been in Texas for nearly 3 years, right? And you know, there's a certain way we like to wear our clothes. And the few months that it is cold, I like to throw on a hoodie, and sometimes I'll throw a jersey over it, right?
Right.
Now, you walk around Jersey City, that's like that's common. You see that everywhere,
uniform,
right?
Yep.
So there's probably one time I did wear it, wore unauthentic with the hoodie. I went to a restaurant, and I could kind of sense and sniff out like a change in perception. You know, a server isn't checking on us as much versus a time where I had gone to the same restaurant wearing a plain tee and shorts, where you know the service was on the ball. So there's definitely something there. So a lesson learned. You know, I just had to like pick up on these nuances and kind of adjust accordingly. And it's unfortunate because that's just the way it is. You know, I'm in the South, and while there are many transplants here, you know, the prevailing community is, well, you know, conservative, and well, I mean, who's gonna rock a hoodie with a jersey over it,
right?
With a snapback. So
just hearing both of your stories just now, it tells me, and it kind of confirms for me that since we've grown up, I think nothing's changed, but everything's more out there now because of, one, social media, two, everyone's got access to a video camera now. I mean, growing up in Jersey City and, you know, coming from the heart of like you had St. Anthony's basketball, you had prep basketball, you had Hudson basketball. Again, our boy Jeff Almanana, shout out to Jeff, will agree with me on this. You got two Asian guys on their respective basketball teams, and Eric Andres, I think, might attest to this too. I faced being on Hudson Catholic's varsity basketball teams, like, why is this kid on the team? And like, it's kind of like, it's a Jeremy Lin situation. Like, you don't,
Right.
if you feel like you don't belong there. And I think my relation to all this is, I think we were playing Lincoln in Lincoln. You step onto that court, the only Asian kid in the entire building, because, predominantly Lincoln High School was black, and then Hudson Catholic, we were all mixed. But I think when I stepped on the court, it was the first time I heard the reverse racism stuff, where it's you don't belong here, you CHINK, because everybody's Chinese at that point, I guess, so that's Asian,
Right.
and I hated that feeling, and I think that was the first time I actually felt ashamed of who I was, which is crazy to think,
Right.
now as an adult. And you get that same feeling sometimes when you're in a place that, you walk into that that you feel like you don't belong, and it sucks. Like, I think coming from Jersey City, we had moved here in New Milford, where we are now, I believe, was that 7 years ago. And for me and my family, it was probably the greatest move we've made, because it's safer here.
Sure.
I'm not looking outside to check on my car all the time, but at the same time, you're kind of in foreign territory, because now the demographic has changed.
Right.
And I was still dressing like to you guys' points, I was still dressing the same way I would dress in Jersey City, not thinking anything of it, because you're thinking times have changed, no one's going to care, blah blah blah. But then you get looks from parents, you get looks from store owners, like, and you just like, if I came in here, like you said, in a button up, my work clothes, it'd be totally different. And again, to your guys' point, nothing's changed. I don't think. I think things have gotten relatively better, but the incidents that have happened within the last decade, I think, confirms me nothing's changed, but everything is getting now exposed.
Right. Yeah, and I think being called chink, having grown up in Jersey City, is probably the full extent of racism that we were subjected to. Now, we all love Jersey City. We pound our chests about it with good reason. It was a great place to grow up. It had its flaws, but it built character, right? And that's part of the reason why we take pride in being from there. But it's also one of the most diverse cities in America. And been here. I was pretty much there my whole life until 2017, and from preschool on, I was surrounded by African Americans, Egyptian, Hispanic, Black. So I didn't see any color. They were just people with different personalities. I never felt that racism ever held me back in some way, or made me feel like an outcast. And plus, with a growing Filipino community, you always had something to fall back on. And I think that was magnified when we entered high school and we started meeting Filipinos from different parts of Jersey City.
Like, you didn't realize how many Filipinos there were.
In different towns. And then all of a sudden, you went from having two core friends, Jet included, to having like a full suite and crew of Filipinos from different parts of Jersey City in different towns, which is fine. We all sat at our own table. But we had a good rap with the rest of the guys. You had the Carney table, you had the Bayonne table, and wherever else. I never felt like I was looked down upon because I was Filipino or Chinese, or however I was perceived to be. And I think that's one of the most proudest things I have about being raised in Jersey City.
I think for me, Ace, like you said, I feel it now. I feel, my kid goes to basketball camps, goes to AAU practices, tryouts. Like I told you, the surrounding towns here are predominantly white, right? So these things are happening on the weekends. And like I said, I'm not a khakis button-down weekend guy. And like you mentioned, I'm proud Jersey City. I'm proud inner city. I grew up in hip hop culture. That's who I am. So when I wear a fitted hat, sweatpants, Jordans, a hoodie, that's my uniform. So what happens to me is when I drop off my kid, everybody looks at me because they're like, what is this guy doing here?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, you know, I'm ostracized ostensibly, right? Nobody talks to me because it's like, what is this guy doing? You know, my kid's one of the better players on the team. So they're like, who's that guy? Oh, okay, that makes sense. That guy must be from like East Newark or something, right? Somehow he managed to get here. But then I'll pick up my kid on like a weekday practice. So I'm in, you know, full suit because I'm coming from work. And people will double take and they'll go, wait a minute, are you the same dude? That, you know, all of a sudden people are talking to me because I'm wearing a suit, you know, a suit and a sport coat, you know, wingtip shoes. And that's the part that irritates me the most about racism is that somehow the clothes that you wear define who you are as a person, right? The stuff that I'm comfortable in all of a sudden makes me not suitable to speak to. Not that I want to talk to these assholes anyway, but just that feeling like when my kid's like, hey, dad, how come you don't know any of the other dads? I'm like, because they're jerks. You know what I mean? So to your point, Ace, about us growing up in diversity, we don't live in diversity here, right? And my kids are not going to grow up in diversity. And I don't know how that's going to impact them. To the point that you made about we don't see color, I don't know what that's going to mean for my kids. And I worry, you know, to be perfectly honest, I don't know how they're going to deal with, because like you said, we dealt with it because there were many, many different viewpoints that we dealt with on a day-to-day basis. They're not going to have that. They're going to have, you know, whatever viewpoint is predominantly here is what you're going to get. And they either inculcate themselves to it or they become alien from it. Right. So that's the part that worries me as my kids grow up in this environment. Like, again, to Mayor's point, you move out, right? You get out of the hood. You're like, nice. My car's not going to get broken into. My house is not going to get robbed. But then you feel ostracized from society because you don't belong here, or at least that's what they think. Right. And I say it all the time. I don't feel like I belong here all the time because I don't walk around with mock turtlenecks and khakis on the weekend.
Right. And I love that you're tying in the parenting corner now because I share the same sentiment also. Like we're venturing off into the unknown. Our kids are getting older. They're starting grade school and we can't sit them down and say, well, when I was in elementary school, like, oh, wait,
right.
yeah, you are definitely a minority. I don't have Jet, John, Rayanne, Anjali, and all these and a whole host of other kids that look just like me in the class that I could easily relate to and feel comfortable.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, they don't. You know, so I don't have a reference point. So I kind of have to like you know, learn as they go, you know, and kind of like understand the nuances of being in a suburb in Austin, Texas. You know, and I'll bring up one point. Okay, we're currently searching for homes, and it just dumbfounds me that we have to look at demographics because when you consider buying a home,
makes a difference, man.
You consider the school districts, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it goes over my head, but Carla brings it up. Like, hey, you gotta look at the demographics. I'm like, okay, well, this is how it looks, and I'm like, okay, and then she kind of like laid it out for me. I'm like, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, let's move on. So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm at a loss for words sometimes when I think about how X and Annalise are growing up in this particular part of New Jersey compared to where we grew up. Again, the diversity here. Luckily, New Milford is right next to Bergenfield, and for anybody that knows Bergenfield, that's basically like Jersey City Part 2.
Jersey City North.
Jersey City North, right?
Yeah. Shout out to the Bergenheads. Still got love for y'all.
Yes, shout out to the Bergenheads. And I think it's right below New Milford's right below Bergenfield, so we still have. I mean, not as much as Jersey City, but we still have some of our culture that seeps down, and we can always go to Red Ribbon. We could always go to what the formerly Jollibee and some other Filipino restaurants on Washington Avenue over there,
Dude,
which is
best damn Topsalo in Bergenfield, hands down.
Cucinera.
Oh my God!
Shout out to Cucinera.
Shout out to Cucinera.
Shout out to Cucinera.
Yep. Oh man, you make me want to go tomorrow. I wish I could.
Dude, it's good, man.
It's really good. I mean, on a side note, if you're in Bergenfield in New Jersey, Cucinera is where you want to go get breakfast, for real.
Dopest silog house ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah. Ever.
Back to the point. Yeah, luckily that we have part of the culture still nearby, but you know, my ex has one Filipino friend,
right,
in the school, and Elise has maybe 2 Filipino friends in the school. I mean, and it's so much different from OLM, from St. Al's, where you at least had 5 or 6 of them that you can play off of.
Yeah.
And just the way that they're growing up academically, it's different, especially with this common core.
Don't get me started, man.
Oh, man.
Bro,
Talking to an engineer, don't get me started on common core, bro.
Bro, I can't, like, this, and I've seen it more since we've been working from home, because X sits in this desk right next to me over here to do his, and he's asking me these math problems that I know how to do in my head, but they're doing it just like this, what square is this square and this square and this square, and we're just like, what the heck? Like, what is this? You carry the 1, there's your answer.
Right.
And I'm just like, I think the way they're learning certain things might be more detrimental to their development than I think, but I'm not part of the education board. It's like, there's something in this said to whoever's facilitating their education that this is going to work better than the way that they did it before. But I don't see it. To
tie this whole thing up, I guess we're all worried, right? About race was so much easier for us to navigate because we were so, to Ace's point, so engrossed and surrounded by race. Like it wasn't an issue because we had every flavor of the rainbow, so to speak, available to us. I think now, as we set off on our own paths and move away from the initial parts of where our families emigrated to, Jersey City, Bergenfield, places like that are generally first stop landing spots for immigrant Filipinos, immigrant anybody. I think we're all worried. At least I'm worried, right? About, like you said, Ace, how do you navigate it moving forward without having reference points, without having racial reference points? How do you tell kids what it's like to have a Somalian friend, to have an Egyptian friend, to have a friend from Africa, right? Right. You don't have that because it becomes so much more homogenous on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of what we're seeing, a lot of these racial tensions that are flaring up, I think is exactly, this is the root. This is where it started. People not exposed to other racial cultures and not being able to navigate it when they were young, all of a sudden start believing, because here's my take on it, right? When you see somebody who looks different than you going through the same problems as you, you understand that they're exactly like you. They're just a different color. Right? The problem with these people that are committing these acts is that they don't see these people as just like them. They see them as foreign individuals, segregated from what they normally do and what they normally see, and they believe them as not of their own, not even human, right? I mean, I hate to put it that way, but very different from the way they live their lives. And I think it causes them, it allows them, I should say, to do these terrible things like put your knee on somebody's neck for 9 minutes, shoot somebody while they're jogging through a neighborhood. All the things that we've been hearing about is because people allow themselves to think that these are less than normal human beings. And I think it's because they were not exposed to these people early enough and often enough in their lives. And like you said, like Maersk said, I think I'm worried about that because our kids are going to grow up in an environment that's going to mimic that. And it's up to us as dads and moms
Mhm.
to expose them to those things, to bring them back to Jersey City, to bring them to the Philippines, to bring them everywhere, anywhere, to see that these people are just like you. They have the same problems, they have the same hopes, they have the same dreams.
Right.
So,
At the very least, the as parents, as fathers, what we should do is tell everyone, yeah, they're gonna look different from you. Yeah, they're gonna talk different from you. They might be, they might be j- fresh out of where they came from, but they're human. That's to drive the point home. To drive the point home, you're gonna have the same problems they have eventually in life, and you need to be there for each other. We need to be there for each other regardless of what race we are, what gender we are, whatever you identify as. Everyone's human and everyone's different, and I think the the sooner everybody understands it, and again in 2020, I can't really fathom that we still don't get that everyone is different on the outside, but on the inside we're all the same, man. It's it's crazy. It's
Right.
crazy to think that my face, just because my face is brown or yellow or however you want to perceive it, that this is what's going to prevent you from helping me. This is what's going to prevent you from understanding me, and this is what's going to prevent you from treating me like a human being. It's still crazy.
I often overlook the fact that while we talk about this, history is repeating itself, right?
Mhm.
At least for first generation Filipino American folks like us, right? I mean, our parents immigrated to an entirely different country. So I kind of feel they kind of approach things with their children with the same kind of fear. Like they can't talk about their upbringing and apply those principles to their kids. At least things that are applicable to how we were growing up outside of the home. So that makes me understand and appreciate how ironclad their rules were,
right.
because if you can't
Why it
control
had to be ironclad.
why it had to be ironclad,
Right.
and while they can't control the outside influences, they could damn well control the culture that they grew up with within the walls of their homes. And I never quite understood it until adulthood, why I had to be home at a certain time,
Hmm.
why I had to stay at the table and eat all of my food, and
Mhm.
other nuances, how I was disciplined, how I wound up just looking at my dad and just like getting in line, and all you had to do is shoot a look because he set an example early on,
Right.
and I kind of feel that we kind of have to take that route too,
Yep.
for fear of the unknown. So as long as you establish a firm, tight home culture, the kids should be fine, and you just kind of adjust to everything that's outside, and kind of you know help them navigate through all the noise that they'll come across as they grow up.
Amen. All right. So I think we went through a couple of corners there. Let's move on to sports. One of our more favorite topics, a little bit lighter than racial tensions and navigating parenthood.
Man,
So
I relaxed when you just said sports.
That's right.
Yeah, I could smile now.
So you can relax some more. Patrick Ewing is home after being hospitalized from COVID. So let's, as Knicks fans, you guys can applaud that one. Ace, you
Yep.
have that weird look on your face. You okay?
Yep. Sigh of relief. Sigh of relief. I think I've made it very clear to everyone who would listen and everyone I've chatted with that I was really concerned. I was really worried because out of all the NBA players, ex NBA guys that announced that they contracted COVID, none of them really announced that they were hospitalized. Whereas
Right.
with Patrick Ewing, he announced that he was hospitalized. So that got me worried, and I was kind of holding my breath until we got word that he was released. So I'm glad the big fella is back home recovering.
Maris, thoughts on Pat coming back home?
Well, I had posted on my Instagram the back page of the Daily News that Ewing dunks the virus, and
New York Post
Yeah.
headline, by the way,
I
or
I
Daily
miss
News headline.
Daily News.
I
Yeah.
miss New York back pages for real.
Yeah. it's funny enough. That's because there's no sports. That's what they put on the back page. And that's the first time in a while since Ewing retired that you've seen him full page on the back page of the Daily News, and it's because of that. But I'm thankful for that. He's one of our heroes growing up, and all time favorite center for most of us. Something that Ace said, I don't think I could fathom Kobe and Ewing in the same year. So I'm glad that Pat is doing well, and hopefully he'll fully recover sooner than later.
Yeah, I was reading something, whether it was on the Ringer or one of the other sports websites. It was really a good insight that they were saying, with what we know now about, COVID and who it impacts, they were saying it stinks that Patrick Ewing had to go to the hospital, but it also gives people a lot of perspective to take this seriously.
Mm.
And to Ace's point, you heard KD get it, and it was kind of like no big deal. You heard Rudy Gobert get it; it wasn't really a big deal. But the fact that Patrick Ewing, a beloved New York sports icon, got hospitalized, and considering how many more African Americans and Latinos are getting hospitalized in New York City, they said that it might reinforce a lot more of the social distancing and sanitization aspects that they've been asking the public to do. Because we look at these people, and to your guys' point, you idolize these guys, right? You look at them as heroes, and when you see them in these precarious situations, and you realize, oh, COVID sent them to the hospital, it galvanizes it for people that it's a real thing. And as tough as it was that he did go to the hospital, I think it's a good message to tell other folks to take it seriously and don't take this lightly. So it's good that he's back. I'm glad that it didn't hurt him. But now it looks like the NBA is also looking to get everything back on track, right? They're Adam Silver is starting reopening plans. And I think the initial thought is to start it sometime in July, late July. The season was officially suspended on the 11th, so that's 77 days up to now that you haven't had basketball. Nothing is set in stone because there's some logistical things that they got to go through, and the players' union would obviously have to agree to it. But it looks like it's going to happen, and it's going to happen towards the July timeframe. So, with that, what do you think the format's going to look like, guys?
I'm excited if what they're proposing, rumor wise, is going to come to fruition. First of all, I'm excited, period, that basketball is back. But I think if they're doing a play-in like they say they are, or if they're going to be doing a 4-group tournament like they say they are, I love that idea. First of all,
style.
Yeah, and I think we addressed this in the previous episode. It brings back the competitiveness, and I think if the format that they're talking about works out, I would hope that they would keep that going forward, because I think I think the competitiveness is there. It would stay there, and then again, it would prevent a lot of tanking, and maybe not all, not completely diminished tanking, but it would prevent that. And then who knows? Like, it's unfortunate that it had to come out of COVID, this format, but if one thing had to one good thing had to come out of it, I'm glad it might be this.
Yeah, the eradication of Eastern Conference playoff spots for undeserving teams. Yes, please. Like, I don't want to watch the Wizards play. Let's be perfectly honest, right?
Oh man.
I mean, right, Ace? I mean, were you down to the initial thought was all 30 are going to play, but then they thought better of it. Then they're like, to Mar's point, they got a couple of things in the air. Is it going to be 16? Is it going to be a play-in? What do you think about what's been thrown around right now in terms of formats for the playoffs or playoffs?
There's so much information being thrown around, and I'll be honest, I haven't really gone around to read everything. But I'll tell you what I did do. Okay, I thumbed through a lot of these articles, and I checked to see if the Knicks were mentioned as part of a pool of teams that needed to play in for the playoffs. And I'm relieved they did it. You know why? I want to be in the lottery this year. That's all I got. That's all I got.
You want LaMelo Ball, don't you?
I do. I'm all in on LaMelo Ball.
Tell me why.
Oh boy.
Oh, dude, come on, man. Have you seen him? He'd be the perfect facilitator for our guys. You know, he's got like near Jason Kidd like passing ability. He's like his brother, but better. He's longer. He has a better wingspan. You know, I mean,
Listen,
yeah, he can't hit a jump shot, but he could develop that.
the jury's still out on Lonzo in my mind. I mean, he's in a better place, but I think the jury is still out on him.
I like him though. He's got
I
the
do.
tools.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, he's got the tools, but you're right.
Mhm.
I think he still has something to prove, though. At least in my eyes, I don't think he's a surefire all-star.
Right.
But I think at least Lonzo has a better track record than LaMelo. No, I think the track record for LaMelo is what's holding me back. I think to his credit, though, I don't think there's anybody else that's better that we could draft in this specific slot that we probably would get. So I'm with you on that, but
Mhm.
I don't know how everything's gonna fit. And I think being 77 days without basketball is giving Knick fans hay fever. because
It's true.
we've been hearing all this rhetoric about what they're gonna do and yada yada yada. And I think, you know, we're hungry for basketball. That's all.
Very, very hungry. And you know what? I want everything beyond just LaMelo Ball. I want the whole big baller brand circus.
Oh no!
I want LeVar Ball.
You don't.
Bring it to New York. I want all of that smoke.
You say you want it.
I want that
first
smoke.
time he goes on television and starts saying my kids are better than LeBron, then you'll start regretting it.
Yep. I want that match. I want all of that New York City smoke.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when LeVar says, "Oh, LaMelo is gonna be the best Knick ever, better than Patrick Ewing"?
That's what I'm saying. This is the type of suspect shit that guy is want to do.
Man, listen, if LaMelo puts us in playoff contention and wins us a chip, hey man. I mean, I've been waiting all my life for a chip.
Well, his track record with Lonzo has not been good as of late anyway. So I don't know how much involvement he has now with Big Baller Brand and all the shoes they didn't fulfill for people. But I think the kids are starting to realize he's probably not a good thing to have around on a fairly regular basis. Exactly to the point that Mariska's making about you're going to cause a lot of headaches in the media frenzied environment that is New York City.
Oh, I love it.
This fool said all three of his kids were going to be in the NBA. Look, where's LiAngelo right now? Where's Jello? Where's Jello right now?
He's in Czechoslovakia, isn't he? In Prague.
That's fine. He could play on the Knicks G League team. You know, we signed Chris Smith, right?
Stop it.
We signed Chris Smith, J.R. Smith's brother.
Don't remind me of that either.
Hey, whatever it takes. Captain America voice.
All right, let's get back to the NBA. What do you guys think about Dinwiddie, ever the forefront of all things, you know, NBA salary oriented, is saying or advocating for hazard pay? And this I agree with him, right? If it does become a team of like 14, 16, whatever the case may be, he does have a point in that the revenue that'll be generated will be solely based on the teams that are playing.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So in his mind, he's like, we should be the only ones because we're going to be the ones putting ourselves at risk and our families at risk. Even though it's going to be one centralized location, you're obviously going to have people show up there and be there. I think he has a point, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to be the one, however long this tournament is, you know, from all the way from first round all the way to the finals, you're potentially exposing yourself and whoever is in your party to whatever anybody else may potentially have. And again, the NBA was one of the first places that confirmed infections across the world, or at least in the U.S., I should say. What do you think on that take? I think that's it's a logical thought process from his standpoint.
Yeah, I think we first need to see what the NBA does in terms of testing and the protocols they're going to set in place surrounding like all of that to make sure that the players are put in a position where they're safe and their families are safe as well. And I believe they're still discussing that. But yeah, I agree. The players should be compensated as such because you're asking them to uproot their families, and should they decide to join them, to some city, albeit the happiest place on earth, for X amount of weeks, and putting themselves at risk. But uh, the key is to mitigate that, and hopefully they'll set an example and standard for what sports will look like going forward. And I'm excited for it because you're going to be looking at it through a different lens. I'm looking forward to hearing what's going on in the court. And make sure you keep UB Brown like 20 rows up, because I'm sure if they hear UB breaking down plays, guys are going to be like, "Yo, UB, don't give away them plays, all right?" So, because you know how he goes, he's the goat of like analysis. So
First of all, I
He
would
gets in
want to
there.
keep him. Yeah, I want to keep him away from anybody because Huey Brown is like in his late 80s, right?
Yeah.
right. Oh yeah,
So
that's true. That's
he's
true.
really in like the higher risk range in terms
Yeah.
of potential people, right?
That's true. But you know what? I love his analysis that
No
much.
doubt, no doubt. I just
Um,
wouldn't want to lose him to somebody coughing in his direction.
Yeah, that's true. Put him in a bubble. We need his analysis.
Nice.
How surreal is it going to be to watch NBA games being played without fans?
Dude,
Without
so
fans,
surreal.
guys. Think about that.
Well, I think it can be. So what's funny is
But that's surreal. No
when I-
fans.
Yeah,
when I
right.
think about that though, I think it depend. There's got to be a facility that they're gonna build. You think there's gonna be a facility they're gonna build for them, or are they all gonna play?
Now they're
No,
yeah. Disney World has plenty of sporting facilities that obviously owned by Disney and ESPN, so they already have like AAU tournaments there, all kinds of other tournaments. So there's facilities, but they vehemently said there will be no fans whatsoever. So imagine like a playoff intensity game and crickets.
Right.
It's gonna feel. You know what? The energy on the court is not gonna be the same.
That's so weird.
There's got to be some way.
Hey.
Obviously they're gonna stream the game.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of what I've been doing the last couple of weeks is setting up conferences where everyone can see to where each other is. There's got to be a way for them to see the fans on like a video, like just all together, like a kind of like a video wall, and just have that sound turned up. I think that's the way I would.
Pajamas. They're gonna see me in my pajamas watching them.
Yeah, who cares? Like, I mean, that'd be great actually if you can have like a huge like video wall of everyone that's tuned into the game, and then they would do it that way, like freaking Running Man style. That would be awesome.
Yeah, like a mosaic of fandom, in the comfort of their home.
But there's something about the feeling, even as fans, right? We've all been to games, high stakes games, right? As fans, this convivial atmosphere, you're high-fiving with dudes, you're yelling, you're screaming, that's gone. Literally. And who knows, to Ace's point about future things that are going to happen, college football is right next to in the pipeline, baseball is right there as well. What do you do when you're playing in front of zero fans and there's 3 seconds left on the clock and it's like practice? There's no noise. And you're right, they might be pumping in like fake artificial clapping, but that is going to be, to me, the weirdest aspect of this whole thing, is that you watch a lot of these games for the intensity level, and a lot of that is driven by how the fans are reacting to the game.
Yep.
Right.
To hear an empty stadium and a basketball being dribbled in an empty stadium is going to be super surreal for anybody who's been a long-time basketball fan. Shit, any fan. I mean, even football, right? Imagine Giants Stadium. Not that the Giants were any good over the last 6 years. Not that there was a lot of cheering, but imagine an empty Giant Stadium and dudes just playing out there like it's their backyard. That's going to be so weird.
Yeah, that to me is going to be weirder.
Yeah.
Watching football in an empty stadium than watching basketball, because the way I look at how basketball is going to look, I look at it as like, how you would imagine the dream team's practices would be like. In fact, you saw footage of it, and
that's a good point.
They maintain their intensity. And at the end of the day, these guys are professionals, right? So they're going to compete no matter what. Yes, it's different that the fans aren't there. And I've watched enough professional wrestling in lieu of COVID and no fans, to think that they're going to put out a good product. Because yes, I know pro wrestling is stage, but these athletes, these sports entertainers, still put their necks on the line and perform these high spots, which are in wrestling parlance, high risk moves,
Right.
and they execute.
Yep. Sure.
Without the pop,
Sure.
which is wrestling speak for reaction. You want to get a
Right.
positive pop or heat if you're a bad guy. They still generate that, and they still remain professional and they still perform at a high level without that being present, and they feed off of that too. So I'm curious to see how it plays out amongst basketball players and football players.
Yeah, and I don't think they would be agreeing to this if they didn't have some sort of plan to keep the excitement in going. Hopefully they're just not like the rest of the world seems to be opening just to open,
Yeah.
Right.
What I saw too is what they're doing in a lot of the soccer leagues in Europe as they slowly start to open. They're starting to get cardboard cutouts of humans, and they're beginning to stick them in the stands.
That's
right?
awesome, man.
Because the visual of it, right? It's like playing NBA 2K on your PlayStation.
Yeah.
Just the visual. You're looking into the stand. It's not empty. It's a bunch of cardboard cutouts of big people or whatever. So you're right, Marisk. I think they're going to find a way to simulate as much as possible what a 30, 40,000 attendance stadium looks like and sounds like. I don't know if you'll ever replicate the feel of it, but certainly it's going to they're going to try their best to make that feel and look exactly the way it normally did.
How much would it cost to have a cardboard likeness of myself courtside? I'd pay a premium for that.
Like a fat head?
Yep, a fat head.
Like an Ace fat head?
Yeah, I'm telling you. I mean, I'm sure there are people that might want to pay a pretty penny to have a...
the other aspect of this, and this is the opposite, Ace, right? And Ace and Marisk mentioned this on one of the earlier podcasts that we have. The VR technology that exists today, we need to start leveraging that. I think that is the next, as they think about formats and conferences, things of that nature. I think they need to rope in now the potential for all of the VR that currently exists in the market and tap into that. I think that would be something that could potentially, in light of what's going on, really make sense.
Yep.
If they're trying to get the ticket revenue. I mean, think about it. If I can pretend to sit courtside and pay whatever $150 through my VR, glasses and hear Hubie Brown talking next to me, or Mike Breen going bang, or whatever the case may be, that might be worth it to people. At least certainly for me. I mean, I have a VR setup. I would love to be able to put that on and watch an NBA playoff game like I'm in the $3,000, $10,000 seats, even though I'm sitting at home in my pajamas.
Right. POV, baby. POV.
I mean,
that's a different category. That's a
oh god.
That's a different category.
I wasn't even thinking about that.
Oh baby.
I don't know if you can find that in the NBA, Ace. There's a POV category there.
Leave it to you, bud. What was I gonna say? Well,
Ace derails it.
VR was, it was a novel thing before COVID, but I think, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And I think necessity is also the mother of innovation in this COVID.
Or porn, as Ace is alluding to.
Oh Lord.
I didn't say it. I just said POV, baby.
It's
POV.
Again, I'm at the forefront of a lot of this stuff. I'm telling you, it was a dying industry until the porn industry got involved again. So to Marisk's point, not to put too fine of a point on it, now the NBA can take advantage of all the technology that porn has brought to light and, begin to use it. So if it wasn't for porn, we would not be sitting here going, it might be viable to watch NBA games using a VR headset. I'm just saying.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
Yes, sir. I'm just think about it. I'm sure companies are in the lab and they're just like developing brand new technology. They're improving on whatever platform they're using, and just think about like the things you could do, tiered packages and
Right.
whatever add-ons you could like stack on top of it, because everyone knows that people are going to be home and they're going to want their fill of sport.
This is the beginning of Ready Player One.
I mean, it's
Mhm.
guys. Let's. The technology is getting there. Processing power is getting so fast.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is feasible. To Ace's point about, hey, do you want to sit next to a likeness of Scarlett Johansson like in the LA Laker game? Sure, you could do that if you want. You know, it might not be her necessarily. It might be some
Sure.
45-year-old dude in his basement pretending to be Scarlett Johansson, but
Yeah.
it's the look and feel.
Yeah, the celebrity package.
That's right.
The box
Boxy,
executive
right.
package.
If they haven't thought of it yet, listen to our podcast.
I'm just saying. I think
you got all the ideas.
it's feasible, totally feasible, and you could. I mean, again, nothing will ever replace going to Madison Square Garden, right?
Nope.
Doing all of that and you know, jumping on the subway and getting out and walking in. But the next best alternative is to be able to see it in a 360-degree digital environment and be watching the guys playing live. That's totally. And Facebook and Oculus had that ad campaign during the playoffs last year, where they had Jonah Hill, right?
Yep.
So the technology is already there. I think it's only going to get better, faster. And I think, you know, to Mark's point about you know, necessity being the mother of invention in this case, it's just going to make it better. So,
I mean, would you want Jonah Hill or Scarlett Johansson?
well, I'm just saying, some people, yeah, you know, who knows? Different strokes for different folks, apparently.
Pause. Different what?
Strokes.
Pause.
All right. So that'll do it for tonight. I think we're next week will be another Around the Corners podcast. We'll be doing some more live streaming, hopefully, once we get all the technology and technical stuff figured out. But yeah, I think this is a beginning of what we're looking to do moving forward. Hopefully keep joining us on our evolution, I guess is what you'd call it, right, guys?
Yep.
Yeah, and stay tuned for my findings for my fitness manifesto.
Oh,
So you know, the
Fitness corner.
gyms, the gyms are reopening, so
listen, we need footage.
We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I want to see
Oh.
footage of what it's like in there, who's not, and who is social distancing.
Oh yeah. I'll likely go, you know, middle of the night or really late when there's nobody except for like one or two people. But follow us on Instagram, 5corners.podcast. Is it, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yep. Plug the rest of the social channels, guys.
You got the Facebook group, right? 5 Corners Podcast, and then we have follow us on Twitter, 5corners.podcast as well. Again, thanks for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.
Peace.